Well, I suppose the fabric reality journey really started for me back in about sort of 2015, 2016 time. I've been in bands for for a number of years, done a lot of touring and stuff, and the band I was in at that point had sort of come to an end, come to its natural end, and I sort of just had to sort of really rethink everything I was doing. Really, at that point in time, guitar bands in general were having just a tough time commercially. Just not getting the streams, not getting the sales. It was a tough time, and there was still a lot of unsigned and bands out there. So your competition was high, but there wasn't really anywhere to go unless you sort of really had some really strong material. So at that point, I thought, you know what, it's probably just time to completely rethink what I'm doing and come at it from a different angle. You know, the music I've always written has always been sort of, it's always had its own character. It's always sounded like me, but when you're in that sort of touring scene, it's easy to slip into sort of following the crowd a bit or trying to recreate whatever's the flavour of the month at that time, or that band's doing really well, so I'm going to do something a bit like them, and it don't work. So I'd sort of thought, well, I thought back on my whole life, like throughout music, and sort of started just to think about what I actually really like myself, like what are the genres, what are the sounds, all these things. As a kid, I grew up with all the 70s prog rock, but then all like the 80s mod revival, the soul. But then, as I became more of my own person, I was getting into like the goth stuff, the hardcore metal, sort of like your gabba, but also like your hard style stuff, gabba, and that, but like also like your really sugary pop music. Like I've always loved a massive hook and something really catchy. So I figured it was probably time to sort of start putting all these things that I liked, all these little elements, into something that is sort of more truly me. So over that point at about, it's probably late 2015, early 2016, I just started writing demos, tons and tons of demos of just, different sounds, different genres, different styles, to sort of start piecing together whatever it was I was going to do with these sort of song ideas. And it started out really quite electronic. I think I'd sort of done a knee-jerk reaction of going from really sort of acoustic based, more rock music. So I was like, let's go the opposite to start with. We'll go more of an electronic based thing, and then over time it sort of it developed into what Fabric Reality became. And the funny thing about music is because everybody loves music, everybody's got an opinion. And I think when I was in the guitar bands, I probably maybe followed people's opinions or people's input a little bit too much, instead of doing, believing in myself and really sort of backing my own ideas. So that was definitely a thought that I had with this project. We need to just build it first and get whatever it is that I'm trying to do out, and then we can start going into other things. So at this point, I'm living in just like a little village in the north of England. It's a beautiful place to live. It's like, I always say, it's like living on holiday, but at the same time, it's really isolated. There's not, particularly for like young people, there's nothing to do. Great for creativity because you've got to make your own fun, but in terms of like stuff to do and different influences, it was difficult. So I'd gone to visit a friend in Leeds, and I thought, we'd gone out for some food and gone for some drinks and stuff, and I was just like, I just need me a bit of this. I need to get back here. So I was born in Leeds, so I thought, let's return home and just see what happens. So I decided to go to Leeds, lived there for a few years, moved into into a house with like a few friends, all musicians. There was, me and four other musicians, and it was just one of the most amazing and creative times of my life. You're just exposed to so much music that I'd never heard before, or different genres, different things. It was amazing. Sometimes you come in and I'd been making music, my music on the ground floor. You go up one level, so there's other stuff going on. You go to the top, there's other music like this. Just constantly creating stuff, constantly making things, and you'd finish a song, you'd give the lads a shout. Oh, what do you reckon to this? We was always just pushing each other, critiquing each other's music, and trying to help each other sort of move forward with what we was trying to do. So that time it was that's really where, probably 2017, 2018, that's really where Fabric started to sort of build a foundation. And during my time in Leeds, like, I'd work part-time in the touring industry. So, I'd drive bands around, different artists on tours and, festivals and all these things. And, I had some amazing chats with some amazing musicians and artists, and just learned so much, and different approaches, how different people do things, how different people thought about things, and I was just sort of just watching and listening, and just picking stuff up. And it's probably around at this point where me and Russ sort of really reconnected. We'd always, since sort of early 2010s, we'd done a lot of touring together in separate bands. We'd recorded together quite a bit, and we'd always sort of kept in touch. You sort of like little updates every now and again. What are you up to? Maybe pass around a few little songs. But we never sort of. It was never anything more than that until I sort of started working in the industry, and at that point I probably wrote well over 100 songs for Fabric Reality. At that point, sort of whittled them down to maybe 25 or 30 that I sort of thought were really good, or they were the best of the bunch. And at that point I sort of approached Russ and sort of said, because we'd always talked about doing something together, it was always there, but we were both on sort of different paths, and at this point it seems like our paths were crossing, and it was sort of like, then it was like a now or never moment, which I think Russ has said that as well, but it's, I'd never thought of it like that. It was just sort of seemed to be this moment where Russ had been doing all this stuff, and he'd been really, making massive strides, and I'd been doing the same, and it just sort of came together. So, I sent a load of demos to Russ. He had a good listen through them. We sort of, picked out a few of the favourites, and it's at that point we started to write together. I think the first was A Human Being, a Planet Earth, which came from an old song that never really got released, but I had the music, I had the backing track and the chorus. Whether or not the words were quite the same, I don't know. It might have just been even nonsense words, just to have the melody in there. So we sort of as an experiment, I sort of said, I don't really know what I want to do in these verses. Let's sort of get together, and sort of said to Russ, just do your thing and we'll see what we have. So he wrote this beautiful melody, some amazing lyrics, sent it back to me. So I'm listening through it, thinking, bloody hell, this actually might be something pretty special. So I sort of just rejigged the lyrics a bit, just added a few things in, and really sort of solidified what the idea was. Put my my top line on it, sent it back. Russ did his production bits, mixed it, and then we sort of got together and had a listen to it. And it's sort of at that point we're thinking, actually, this is something really cool. So at that point we sort of, Russ goes off and writes a bunch of material in that sort of style. I got together the songs that I'd wrote that I thought that were the best, and some were finished, some were sort of, had little bits missing. and we just threw ideas around. I think it's probably about a 6 week period, early 2019, I think, where we really, put a lot of effort into writing Fabric, and slowly but surely, all these older songs were just pushing out, and the new material that me and Russ were writing together and collaborating on was just just coming to the forefront all the time. Because the whole thing was like, we don't want to start like releasing music and before we know what it is and before we've actually got enough material together to actually to actually do something with. So our idea was, we're going to write an album that we're going to push that beyond that. We're going to try and get 20 to 30 songs that we're both mega happy with, that sound great, produce great. So that's what we did, and it was just such an amazing experience because I've worked with so many people that just never had this sort of symbiotic relationship before, where I can throw something at Russ and he'll come. When it comes back, it's like if somebody could have gone in my mind and done like the perfect version of it, it's like he's just like done it. It's just so bizarre, and we've always sort of like pushed each other into things where we might, with like ballads and things like that. We've deliberately tried to not stick too like linear with the songs. Sort of trying to recreate the same sort of thing. We get a bunch of tunes that are a bit rockier, then we sort of think, well, what, start thinking about live or thinking about an album playthrough. Well, we need to break it down, So the whole project, the dynamic of it has been thought all the way through, and it's always been a sort of constant discussion from me and him, and it's just been amazing because, I can sort of just write a little idea or write a basic song and like, throw it over, what do you reckon to this? And he'll do his thing, and then when it comes back, we know if it's going to be Fabric or not. So that's sort of how the whole thing has sort of come together, and it sort of led us to this point